Please, do I need to mention that? Thank you. We'll resume the meeting at 2:47 p.m. Councillor Churchill moved to motion prior to the adjournment and has spoken to his motion. We have been in touch with the applicant and he has refused an extension of time. I will now open the floor to discussion from other councillors that may wish to do so. Councillor Young.
Madam Mayor, thank you.
If I may, Councillor Young, this is on Councillor Churchill's motion.
I understand.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, thank you for what you've done so far. I'm ambivalent about supporting this motion, and talking out loud might help me make my mind up, or someone might speak later that will make my mind up one way or the other. One of the things that concerns me happens to be we have a statutory obligation to deal with an application within a certain period of time. That period of time is not yet up, but is almost. If I agree to support this motion, it's deferring it to an indefinite date because we won't know the date. It's uncertain. If we do defer it, it might well result in a deferral beyond the statutory period, which means that the matter won't be dealt with and there will be a deemed approval. If we refuse this to pass this motion, then we'll have to deal with the application itself because it's still on the books. And if we agree to the application, we can impose conditions. If we refuse the application, there will almost certainly be an appeal. And it seems to me, in my little knowledge of these things, that it's likely to succeed, bearing in mind the prior decision of the Trade Practice of the Tasmanian Planning Commission, saying that the word "or" was an intentional insertion in the scheme. And we run the risk that we will lose an appeal and that the TASCAT will in fact impose its own conditions. So I'm afraid to say that I've just talked myself out of voting for this motion because we must deal with the matter because the consequences are too much of a tangle and a very large risk of a heavy financial impost on the council.
Thank you, Councillor McQueenie.
Yeah, I guess it's a comment as a contribution to the discussion. I find it incredible that we find ourselves in a position where, in a process of correcting an error, which remains as obvious as it was the moment it was discovered, that the body that will ultimately make a decision on that, the Planning Commission, and this process are not allowed to interplay in so much as how we have to make a decision about this. It seems like Yes Minister, to be honest, what it says about our planning scheme, that we have to, as a community, accept that there can't be the intent of why that special purpose zone exists maintained because of an administrative error and a process that can't interplay with the correction of it. And I think we should all be pretty disappointed in what our planning scheme offers. The Tasmanian Planning Landscape offers up to us around that, and I, wouldn't be surprised, nor will I be disappointed if people weren't advocating around changes so that this never exists going forward.
Any other, Councillor Woods?
Yeah, I'll do. Thank you, Mayor, but I've just got to try and word it in my head so that people can understand what I'm actually saying, let alone me understanding what I'm actually going to say. I agree wholeheartedly with Councillor Churchill's sentiment with regards to the motion. However, this application in my head, and I'll seek clarification through you to the acting general manager. This application was presented in a time when with the word or. And that's the big sticking point. Is that correct? That it's that word. How can such a little word be so big is beyond my, and it is huge, really, in the big scheme of things. Even if we refuse this, it was still presented at that time. So that's what we have to deal with, not whether the Tas Planning Commission make a ruling. We still have to deal with this at its time with the word or. Regardless of the decision of Tas Planning. Is that correct? And was that clear?
Through you, Mayor. So yes, you need to deal with the application. So when it was submitted, so
that's
the decision on the amendment that's happening, that will come at a point in time, but that's not retrospective. So it's not, you know, from 6 months ago. It will be from the decision of that amendment.
And if that happens, okay, so if this is passed and the Tas Planning Commission take out that word or, this won't open the floodgates for many, many more subdivisions in Dolphin Sands, will it, or is this a precedence?
So through,
If they take out the word or if they leave the word in,
They take the word or out,
then it's,
and I'm not making myself very clear,
No.
but it is very murky anyway. So
I think I know what you're asking. So through you,
Yes,
Mayor. So I'll refer it to our senior planner who's done an assessment. So as it stands, so if the amendment was not to proceed and it was to remain as it is, how many potential subdivisions could occur? Do we have a rough estimate, James, or am I putting you on the spot?
Under the current scheme as it stands, that allows for subdivision, the estimate, I think a rough estimate would be maybe 40 subdivisions potential, but that's presuming that everyone wants to subdivide and that everything can be met. So there's a lot of ifs, buts and maybes in that. So under the current scheme, subdivision is permissible, and that's what came back from the tribunal as noted in the report. Under the proposed planning scheme amendment, subdivision would not be allowed.
Yeah.
If that got up. So that's the proposal that the Land Commission is currently looking at.
right.
We, under the current scheme, which is what these applications are under, subdivision is permissible, subject to meeting the requirements.
Because of that word. Or,
Essentially, that word that was inserted.
and also too, there has to be a requirement of frontage for extra. I mean, I know this is stepping out of I'm stepping out of the realm of this application.
Councillor Woods, I think it's an important conversation to have for us to understand what the implications of the tribunal finding that the inclusion of or was not an error, and it has now placed us in this situation. So whilst it could be deemed to be introducing additional information into an agenda item, I think the response that our senior planner or our officers have given to the representative around the appeals tribunal opens it up for a greater discussion. And because of the importance of it, I'm more than happy to let any councillor ask as many questions as they want around it. So
Yeah,
feel free, Councillor Woods.
Thank you. I appreciate that. But like with regards to the possibility of more subdivisions going in Dolphin Sands under this actual scheme, there is a frontage requirement. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
So the frontage requirement is 60 metres, the minimum lot size of 1 hectare, which has always been there. That hasn't changed.
Mm.
Previously, the way I suppose it was interpreted was that there's 3 provisions. It must be for public open space, public utilities, public something or other, and 1 hectare and 60 metre frontage. So that was the way it was previously interpreted. The introduction of the or was after the public, so it had to be for a public or minimum of 1 hectare and a 60 metre frontage, which is why currently it allows subdivision to occur in accordance with those restrictions. So there are still restrictions. There are still, the 60 metre frontage does exclude a lot of lots because each lot must have 60 metres, i.e. you've got to have a minimum of 120 metre frontage. That basically excludes any internal lots. And you've got to have a minimum of 1 hectare, as well as then meeting any other requirements to do with threat species, priority vegetation, things like that.
And even though that's underneath the PPZ, is that correct?
Sorry, apparently the mic's not working. Yes, so that's under the PPZ, bearing in mind that we can only really consider what's before us, not what is potentially may happen. It's not particularly relevant to the proposal. What the assessment is, what we need to look at, or rather, sorry, council is looking at, is how it meets the requirements of the scheme as it currently stands.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Bonner. You might like to pull that microphone around if our other one's not working. That would be great. Thank you. Councillor Woods, do you have any other questions?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Probably a lot, really.
I've got actually, there's a lot of discussion, but there's not a lot of questions. But
Right.
anyway, yeah.
Councillor McQueenie.
Thanks, Mayor. Through you to planning folk. Can I just get some clarification on what was the process for? I understand that TASCAT can make an administrative assessment of what documentation existed at whatever time, and therefore whether a permit is compliant with it or not, right? Sorry, an application is compliant with it or not. But on what basis did they make their determination that it was not an error?
That's, if I may, that's not a question for this particular forum, councillor. I'm sorry.
Well,
I
for
don't think-
me, what I'm trying to understand is at what point do we, because I understand that the word or was there instead of and, but so was the aims and intent, surely, of the instruments that needed to be assessed at the same time. So it's not as if and or negated the overriding factors. So this is, so understanding how they came to a decision where they're making an assessment of whether it was an error or not, which presumably requires an investigation, rather than no, it is consistent with what was written, is germane to what role we can or can't have in asking for something to be done about this, particularly if what I've just heard is that until that TPC makes their decision, anybody can continue to apply for subdivision. And we can't say this needs to be settled quickly or ask for it to be held. So for me, that is germane to what we're doing here and considering here.
So my off the top of the head response, and the planners will tell me if I've got it wrong, is that that's not a question that's easily answered, because I think the decision in this particular matter was quite lengthy, wasn't it? And their reasons, Mr. Bonner, is that correct?
That's correct. The tribunal has made their determination that it wasn't an error.
On what basis?
Oh, it's a very lengthy
Well,
document.
it's in the tribunal determination, and what the tribunal has said that based on, and I think the findings of the TBC and how the LPS went through the process, the OR was not an error, and therefore it stands, and therefore council needs to determine the application.
I understand their position. I just don't understand how they have what their justification for not an error is.
With great respect, councillor McQueenie, I'm not sure any of us do.
Because what I'm sensing through this process is that we are essentially powerless, except in saying no, we're not going to support it. And we can't even ask for an investigation. We can't, it seems to me, ask for any further applications have to be put on hold until this is resolved. We can't even ask for a time frame when they're going to resolve it. So what is our role?
Point of order.
Yeah, councillor Young, you want.
Justifiable concerns on councillor McQueenie's part. But we've had a ruling of law, and the only way to overcome a ruling of a law is appeal. And we haven't done that. And I have a personal view about the whole thing, but that's not the point of it. We are stuck with the ruling that the planning scheme has or in it, not the and that once upon a time you thought was in it. We, for whatever reason, had a belief which was wrong, and the commission, or at least the tribunal, have said you're stuck with the or and you've got to deal with it as it is.
Or
And
we
haven't
can appeal.
appealed.
Is that right?
But
We can
councillor
appeal.
Young, I believe that what we are doing is dealing with it under an amendment, aren't we? Which is to be determined by the tribunal, but there is a risk there that they are going to say, sorry, the or stays in.
But we are dealing with this application when it was
As it
submitted
sits at the
with
moment.
that word, the wording, and that's what we have to deal with. Not that they got it wrong or anyone got it wrong. This
Yes,
he's being dealt with under, it was submitted when that word was in there.
yes.
I get it, but why aren't, sorry if I may,
Yeah.
I've just heard that we can actually appeal ourselves.
So,
Mr. Woodward, thank you. See if you
yeah.
can put some sense into this for us, please.
So through you, Mayor, yes. So obviously, when we did receive the decision from TASCAT, we had the opportunity to appeal to the Supreme Court. We sought an opinion from a barrister, and on the advice that we received in the position, we did not proceed with the appeal.
But we still have an amendment to the planning scheme to remove the word or
Correct.
in play in the tribunal.
Correct.
Do we have any avenues for ensuring that that comes in a timely fashion?
No.
Or how we can treat applications ahead of that decision that we haven't yet to receive?
Through you, Mayor, unfortunately not. We have no control over the process. So we, as you'd be aware with some of the other amendments.
Councillor Churchill actually alluded to a decision of the planning commission, tribunal, whatever, that has been 5 years in the making and is still not determined. So it's a really difficult one for us. And I think in fairness, and the Administrative Appeals Tribunal has really placed this council in a very difficult situation at the moment in relation to our planning scheme. And I have great sympathy with Councillor Churchill and what he said this morning, because this afternoon, I have been critical of the statewide planning scheme ever since it became the statewide planning scheme. And so I'm really struggling with this. I really am. I procedurally, as the chair of the meeting, I've just got to try and determine that we get something that's procedurally correct and is not going to cause this council any more grief than what it currently is.
So sorry,
What we currently have.
one final question, just so that I understand. So there is no avenue for us to, I understand the TASCAT decision
Yes.
and the appeal period's gone, but there is no avenue now, it's a question, not a statement, no avenue now for us to do anything to ensure that until TCP makes its decision on a current application, if you like, from us, that we are not required to accept DAs.
Is that
Through you,
Robert?
Mayor, so, and as this report states, so we would assess it as per the TASCAT decision on the basis that, that we are required to assess with the current wording, and until that wording is changed, that would be the assessment. So we would continue to receive applications and assess them.
So if I was a member of the community and found that alarming, I would be contacting whoever has responsibility for TPC to say the position that puts that vulnerable area of land in and ahead of a decision.
I think the other thing that we have a difficulty with, councillor, is that we currently have a planning scheme amendment before the Tasmanian Planning Commission to remove the word "or," to return to the original wording, if you like, of a particular purpose zone. Is that's correct?
Yes, that's correct, Mayor.
Thank you. But unfortunately, until that's until the TPC have considered that and provided us with their determination, it doesn't form any part of any development application that comes forward. Councillors, I'm mindful of the fact that we've had a fair bit of debate around this and discussion, and I'm fine with that as the chair, because I think it's a particularly important matter. Councillor Churchill, I wonder, would you like to close any debate on this, or would you prefer that I put the motion? Or
No, I would like to close the debate, and
by all means?
I might take some of the sting out of this. I haven't done any of this lightly. I want everyone to know that it was a debate that had to be had. This had to be exposed, and to demonstrate, if nothing else, the extreme pressure that is put onto council and councillors acting as a planning authority. You know, sitting in this room here, there's 5 councillors in the room, and you can see we're all clearly quite distressed, concerned, confused. There's a lot of words that would describe what's happened in this room. And I don't resile from the fact that this is the planning scheme probably acting at its worst to give an opportunity to opportunistic developers to make a decision that is going to clearly impact an environmental situation for eternity, potentially. What I will do, I will withdraw my motion. Of course, I will need the permission of the seconder to withdraw that motion. It's been pointed out to us very clearly that our statutory obligations in this situation could well cost community and council and community tens of thousands of dollars, with us just attempting to do our job and to do it properly. But I don't want to put council to that. I just want people to know what is going on out there and the potential for this sort of pressure and decision to be got, in my opinion only here, very, very wrong. I'm quite happy to withdraw my motion because of the financial risks, and that's the only reason. The financial risks to council. We could, as I said, be talking tens of thousands of dollars. There's 2 of these applications coming at us today, so double whatever that number is, and that's the potential cost to community. We haven't budgeted that sort of money into our budget, and we shouldn't need to. Thank you, Mayor. With the permission of the seconder, I will withdraw that motion.
Right, Councillor McQueenie?
Yeah, and I support that but with exactly the same lament and feeling of impotence. that these processes create.
Just for, thank you, councillor McQueen and councillor Churchill for that consideration. I will just remind council that we do still need to make a decision on this matter as a development application. Councillor Woods?
Thank you, Mayor. I will put the motion.
I have to
No,
move it first.
No, just give me 2 seconds. Can you just give me 2 seconds? So on the basis, as the chair, I declare with the permission of the seconder, councillor Churchill has withdrawn his motion. And with the permission of council. So the motion is now withdrawn and will play no further part in the meeting. I now seek a motion for the matter. Councillor Woods, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. I will move that pursuant to section 57 of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993 and the Tasmanian Planning Scheme for Morgan Spring Bay SA 2022/00034 at 945 Dolphin Sands Road, Dolphin Sands, CT 54666/148 be approved with the following conditions from 1 to 26 and advice A to T.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Young, thank you. Councillor Woods, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As has been seen around the table that there has been discussion. I don't think there's any need to discuss anymore. It's all been put there, and I would like to reserve a comment at the end of I would like to reserve for a comment at the end of the next at the next thing we have to deal with, if I may,
Okay.
please. Thank you.
Councillor Young,
Madam Mayor, I reluctantly seconded this motion because it's the very best of a shocking situation. We're caught with whatever we do, possibly with a very large order for costs against us. This is the best of a very bad situation, and it is a scandal that there's a risk that we'd have to wait for possibly many months, maybe years, for the Tasmanian Planning Commission to deal with this matter. I don't blame the commissioners. The system is, to put in the colloquial, a balls up. And the taking over of planning matters by another centralised body to be formed by the state government, as the politicians have said will occur, seems to me to be taking the future of a person's area out of that ratepayer's own hands and put it to somebody far away that'll impose conditions that don't suit anyone. It'll be a double balls up. I have nothing further to
very
say.
technical term, councillor Young. Are there any?
I'll explain what balls up means. if you
No,
like.
I'm more than familiar with it, councillor. Are there any other speakers on the motion? Councillor Churchill?
Yes, sorry. I probably have already said enough, but it's not on this particular
at all.
motion.
Mm.
And I guess the recommendation that we have, the motion we have now in front of us, does not really align with the purpose of the particular purpose zone. And we're now confronted with a situation where we have to debate whether the subdivision itself, the potential for subdivision itself, isn't actually against the objectives of the particular purpose zone, because that is part of the construct of the particular purpose zone. So you've now got another debate that has to be had. And on that alone, I will vote against this motion. I have no particular problem with this particular, number 945, the 4-lot subdivision, no particular issues on normal planning grounds, but this is not part of the construct of what the purpose of the particular purpose zone is all about. I will not be supporting the motion.
Madam Mayor, can I ask the last speaker, Councillor Churchill, to elaborate the reason why it's against the specific purpose zone and why you feel that that zone overrides the more detailed provision of the scheme? That'll influence my vote.
Councillor Churchill, do you wish to?
I'm
Answer
happy
that?
to answer that to the best of
I'm
my
happy to, I'm
ability.
happy to allow it.
I may need planning advice on top of that. However, it's the objective of the particular purpose zone. Particular purpose zones are in place for a particular purpose. That is part of the purpose. This is a low density subdivision in a very special environment, constructed some 30 odd years ago. 1960s, I think the original surveys were done, and most of these lots were sold off in about the 1990s. So in the last 30 odd years, there's been no further subdivision for all the right reasons. That was part of the construct of the thing to start with, to protect the environment, to provide a place for people to live within an environment that was very delicate, had very special characteristics that needed to be protected as a particular purpose zone. And therefore, the objective, this major objective here, is being it's been taken out or ignored, if you like, as part of the particular purpose zone. So in my mind, at least, and I don't know whether this will satisfy what's required by the planners, but in my mind, it is not consistent with the objectives of the particular purpose zone.
If I may, Councillor Churchill, I think that's the problem, isn't it? It's consistent with the particular purpose zone with the word "or" in it. It just is not consistent with the particular purpose zone before the word "or" was included. And so, and that's where I'm struggling.
Yeah.
I haven't had a lot to say about this, but that's where I'm struggling at the moment. As I understand it, and Mr. Bonner will correct me if I'm wrong, it meets the requirements of the particular purpose zone with the word "or" included, which has now been determined by the tribunal. So the debate and conversation that we need to have to change it has to come in the amendment so that we then end up with the particular purpose zone that you're actually referring to now that meets that 30-year-old concept, if you like.
Can I just make
is that
one-
right?
Yeah, if I can just make
Absolutely. I'm more
one-
than happy for you to.
one further quick comment on
Yes, of
that. I
course.
mean, exactly what you were saying is correct. It's just, it's beyond belief that a window of some months or a couple of years after 30 years can be opened up like this.
Yes, agree.
And as if it is totally correct and as if it should be allowed before it's ever investigated, before a full construct,
Yes.
before it goes to community. A change to the LPS should have gone to community. This change did not go to community.
No.
There's so many things wrong here that, you know, I could debate this all day.
Isn't
but
that an argument for another day with the amendment that we've got before TPC at the moment? Is that a reasonable?
Through you, Mayor, I think that essentially the hearings have been held and now
We're just waiting for
we're
the
waiting
outcome, are we? Oh, that could be interesting.
And it could be soon, or it could be a long way down the track. So,
Okay. All right.
but however long it is, if we accept that this is acceptable, then we are accepting it while ever that is open, as I understand, until we have a decision from the TPC.
So my concern around this is, I don't agree with it. I truly do not agree with the change to the particular purpose zone. I'm conflicted in that we're told that the tribunal has changed the particular purpose zone. And so this development application now, or subdivision application now, meets the requirements of the particular purpose zone. I've got no reason to doubt that. So reluctantly, I'm going to have to support the motion. Very reluctant, but it is, I need the community and everybody else to realise that I am reluctantly doing it because I've been placed in a difficult situation by the appeals tribunal, and to some extent by the current Tasmanian planning scheme, which we sit under. So, any other speakers in relation to the motion? Councillor Woods, would you like to now? Councillor McQueenie, did you have something?
Yeah, I guess I come from a regulatory background, and it has to do with health practitioner regulation, registration and performance. And that is framed around safety to the public. And so where there are questions of whether the detail of a specific event might be in question, ultimately it has to be consistent with safety. And to me, that's, I think, the point that Councillor Churchill's making. And so, therefore, to support something that doesn't meet that ultimate aims is almost by commission to agree with them, or omission. So I too, in the absence of having any other mechanism to say there needs to be some reckoning around this issue, and it needs to be timely, and it needs to be in place till the ultimate decision is made, I can't throw the aims and purpose under the bus. So I too won't.
Councillor Woods?
I'm not allowed to swear, am I?
No, ma'am.
Tascat said no.
However, however, as the chair of the meeting, I would suggest
No, you don't.
a lot of words that come to
No,
mind.
thank you. You don't want to hear that sort of language in the chambers, and I'm sure I'd be kicked out for it. It's a twixt and between situation I find myself in here. I'm closing.
Sorry,
Am I
you are
closing?
closing,
Yep.
Councillor Woods, yes.
Yep. I have to congratulate Councillor Churchill on his doggedness with regards to this. That's an appropriate kind of word, I think. In the sense, and he's brought a lot to light in a way that is understandable, you know, because the planning scheme isn't. And that's got nothing to do with our planners. It's not a personal slight at either of our planners that are sitting around the table or everywhere else. So please don't take it personally. If you do, that's your problem. But I, like you, Mayor, am reluctant to support it. And my biggest fear, though, is that it could open the floodgates, and I only hope to God that it does not. And I'll take on board everything that Councillor Churchill has said, but we've been put in a position where I think that there's no other way to go. Thank you.
On that basis, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Councillors Churchill and McQueenie are against. The motion is carried. Thank you. Agenda item 2.2 is SA 2022/31, 143 Dolphin Sands Road, Dolphin Sands, a 3-lot subdivision. There is a recommendation on page 31.
I'm not doing it. Done it before. Looks like I'm gonna have to do it.
Councillor Woods, is that an indication that you?
Thank
will
you,
move a
Mayor. I'll
motion?
move that pursuant to section 57 of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993 and the Tasmanian Planning Scheme, Glamorgan Spring Bay, SA 2022/00031 at 1433 Dolphin Sands Road, Dolphin Sands, CT 5466/206 be approved with the following conditions 1 to 28 and advice A to T.
Thank you. Is there a seconder, please? Thank you, councillor Young. Councillor Woods, do you wish to speak to the motion?
No, I've said everything I need to say. It's very much the same. I just can't.
Speaker
repeat
against the
again.
motion, councillor Churchill.
Thank you, Mayor. All of the issues that I've raised with 945 Dolphin Sands Road apply here, plus a few others. This subdivision, I really can't accept it in any way, shape or form. There's different issues here that do need to be spoken about. These are approximately 1 hectare lots. These will be now creating the three smallest lots, totally out of character with the entire subdivision of the last 30 years. The smallest lots in the past were down around 2 hectares, which is fine, no objection to that. We're now allowing this one to be split into 3, basically 1 hectare lots. So that's completely out of character and inconsistent with all other development on Dolphin Sands. This subdivision is very, very close to what is described in the proponents' reports by EcoTas as an informal reserve. It's a public reserve under the Crown Lands Act 1998. In theory, there are required setbacks. I'm reading this from the proponents' report. Required setbacks for development within the title, which are presumably established to minimise impacts to the reserve, which is zoned as environmental management pursuant to the Tasmanian Planning Scheme, Glamorgan Spring Bay. Further development within what is proposed to become 3 residential lots has the potential to further impact on the natural values of the reserve. I'm quoting that from the proponent's report. These impacts include installation of boundary fencing, informal access, weed establishment, and the possibility of fire escape. All of those things are talked about by the proponent. And this is a very delicate little patch of ground at the end of the spit. If you look at what's happened there in terms of erosion and tidal effects over the last couple of years, it's been really spectacular, and it's cutting in close to the isolated pond just through the fence, only metres through the fence from this development on the eastern side. I think that there's a few of the directions in this report are a little bit confusing. They talk about that as being the southern side, but I think in reality, it is actually almost due east of the proposed subdivision. On top of all of that, allegedly, there has already been unauthorised clearing done on the subject land. Some valuable native species, such as Banksia marginata, have allegedly been destroyed. As a community member commented at the TPC hearings, into development on Dolphin Sands on the 9th of August, when this issue was discussed. Unfortunately, and historically, I quote, "It is better to ask forgiveness than to ask permission." People continue to clear their land and change the landscape before they apply for development approval. Allegedly, this is another example. I will not support this motion. Thank you.
Any other speakers?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to say something. I'm just thinking about how to say it. I'm sorry, I'm not as verbal as I used once to be.
I'm sorry.
It's not as verbal, apparently.
Oh, that's all right.
I'm not a policeman, I'm not good at verballing. But
Right.
there is a significant difference between this development application and the one we've just approved, because the minimum lot size here is far below that of the one we've just approved, as I understand it. The second thing is the one we've just approved is not on an eroding waterfront. The third thing is that the removal of prior shrubbery and trees, etc., has, it appears from the material that has been provided to us in support of this application, put at risk further erosion. Now, I'd like to ask our planner whether figure 3 on page 25 of the agenda photograph or one is a current photograph or one that was taken some time ago, and if so, when?
Mr. Bonner, thank
Through
you.
Mayor. So this is a photo that's taken off List Map. It's the latest one that we have available. Off the top of my head, my understanding is it's, I think, around about 2 years old, maybe a year, 1 to 2 years old. And it was taken over the last flight that was done, that council has access to the photographs.
If, may I ask another question? Mr. Bonner, has the shrubbery removal occurred since or before the photograph? The shrubbery that Mr. Churchill, Councillor Churchill said. You know the answer to that question?
Mr.
Through you, Mayor, no, I'm not sure what shrubbery removal we're referring to, so I can't provide an answer to that.
Yeah, through the mayor, if I can just make the statement, there are clearly windrows of stacked material on this property in preparation to be burnt. I assume that's what Councillor Young is referring to, is can we see what's changed in that photograph? Well, I think that photograph is clearly not what is there currently. That is my view only, but that's what I would believe. And if you can see, you don't have to go onto the property, you can see quite clearly on the northwestern end of the block where there's some vegetation here, and there's no evidence of that later damage that's been done. It is there. You can see it from the road. You don't have to go onto the property to see.
Well, Madam Mayor, it would appear from me, to me, that there's no evidence of the shrubbery removal in figure 3 photograph. I'm not disputing the removal, but it doesn't show the extent. And in a particular purpose zone, one would think that it's a matter for council to approve shrubbery removal and that sort of thing. The other question I have, the erosion on the general eastern side of this photograph. Does Councillor Churchill or our planner know of the extent of the erosion since the photograph was taken about 2 or 3 years ago?
It's- Mr Bonner, I'm guessing it's not something that you have knowledge of, Mr Bonner.
Oh, if our
Right,
planner
Councillor
doesn't know,
Churchill?
I'd be pleased to hear the answer.
I
You have knowledge of.
can only tell you from observation
Sure.
walking down there. I mean, any of the local community would be able to explain what has happened. It's difficult to explain it in a few words here,
Mm.
but it is seen
I-
what was there in the past, and
Yeah.
like you could once walk right from Swansea to right where that block is without even thinking about the tides. Now you can't get through there at high tide.
Through where?
Along
So-
the beach edge on the front, on the eastern beach and the southeastern, if you like.
Councillor McQueenie,
Thank you.
do you have anything? No. Okay. So again, my concern around this is the situation we've been placed in by the statewide planning team, the tribunal and Tasmanian Planning Commission and anybody else you can think of. And again, I will reluctantly, very reluctantly support it. My main concern is too often development applications like this come to council when work's already been commenced on them. And I just need to know what council's compliance rules, for want of a better term, are available. What compliance rules are available to us when a developer starts the development application before it's sitting on the table and approved? Sorry, Mr Woodward or?
Through you, Mayor. So essentially, you can apply for retrospective works. So
You
there is,
can't what,
you
sorry?
can apply for retrospective works.
Okay,
And sometimes that is that we do charge an extra 50% of fees for retrospective works. So we use that as obviously a disincentive to do that type of things. Not only that, we also issue what's called a notice of intent to issue a notice on people that have contravened the planning scheme. Essentially what that means is it provides them with an opportunity to provide a response to the allegations of a breach. Then council's authorised officers assess that and they can follow that up with orders, which we've done so with a number of properties. Those orders can place requirements on work to be rectified, applications to be applied for, and can also result in infringement notices as well.
so taking account of councillor Churchill's comments inside this development application, is that sufficient for officers to start an investigation? Or does it have to be a specific, I guess that's where I'm coming from. Does it have to be a specific allegation made for the investigation to start?
Through you, Mayor, I guess without getting into the specifics, council officers are aware of this. It's been raised and we followed a process, but
We'll
I
follow the
can't.
process now.
I
Okay,
can't.
that's fine. That's all I need to know, Mr Woodward. Thank you. Okay, councillor Woods. Oh, sorry, councillor McQueenie.
Very sorry, just to follow on from your question there. So what does that mean, what you've just said? And how does it interplay with the decision? So
If I may, councillor McQueenie, it probably doesn't, because it's introducing further information into the agenda item. But it was brought
Yeah.
forward by councillor Churchill as a concern. And in supporting this, I just need to know how council would deal with any potential breaches of the vegetation removal or whatever. That's all I'm just trying to determine.
But I'm
But
still,
if we approve, if we approve this as it sits, how do we then deal with the potential breaches that have been alleged? And that's all I really needed to know.
but I don't understand from that, whilst I understand there's a process, and I'm
Yes.
not wanting to talk about this particular one, but what's the interplay between an approval, a decision that we're making now
Yes,
about whether we're happy for this to proceed in the context of potential denuding or devegetation?
yeah,
Because surely we don't have
Just
to
to-
wait to approve things to act on
no,
something that they shouldn't be doing.
no.
If
Councillor
they're
Young,
doing it.
could you just allow Mr. Bonner to respond is that
Sure.
where you're at, Mr. Bonner? Thank you,
Yes.
and then I'll come to
Yes.
you.
In reply, they are separate issues.
Mm.
So assessment of an application
Mm.
is an assessment of what we have before us. Compliance action is a completely different
Yeah.
kettle of fish, different ballgame. They don't necessarily come together. So you wouldn't refuse an application because someone has already undertaken works generally,
No, but
because that's a separate matter.
that process doesn't interplay in terms of delay or anything.
No, it can complicate matters, but it generally doesn't have a bearing on the assessment of an application.
Right, councillor Young.
I just want to ask our acting general manager, if the council issued a notice of rectification for the rectification of pulling down all the shrubbery, and it'd probably require a few photographs to prove the pulling, because this will show the before and the stuff down, photograph will show the after. Does the council have the right to do as they do on the mainland, insist on screening go up until the vegetation pulled down reaches its prior height?
Councillor Young, that's probably a question for out of
It'll govern my vote decision.
out, out of session to some extent, because as Mr. Bonner has just said, the compliance matter is quite separate to the matter that we're dealing with now. It's just, it's been raised in this forum, and I wanted to know from my, again, like you, I want to know how that progressed once that has actually raised in this forum, but it doesn't actually form part of this decision at this point, as I understand
It'll
it.
govern my vote.
Pardon?
It will govern my vote.
It will govern your vote?
The acting general
Right,
manager's
right.
response.
Yeah, Mr. Woodward?
So through you, Mayor, so as part of the process, whenever we issue obviously a notice of intent, person has a right to apply. We can then issue an order which then places conditions on the offender. That might be, it depends on what the issue is and how we see it could be rectified, or there's a whole number of factors. So screening could be one option, but I can't say what actions.
Until the investigation.
Correct.
Okay. Councillor Woods, do you wish to close on this matter?
No,
No. I'll put the motion. All
Sorry.
those in favour?
reluctantly.
Yes, reluctantly. Those against? Councillors Young, Churchill and McQueenie are against. The motion is lost. I will remind council that we have not made a decision in relation to this, so I will need a further motion for a decision. Sorry,
We have to put it, don't we? We have to,
sorry.
thinking out loud, we have to actually do the definitive refusal motion.
We do.
And I'm just thinking out loud. The reason that governed I'm
Ca-
still thinking out loud. and
Councillor
I'll
Young.
formulate a motion.
Councillor,
go on.
could I just remind you that procedurally, we are live streamed. And so
I
I need to be very mindful of the procedural fairness in relation to this matter.
Well, I'm thinking out loud and if my thought process end up the right way, without me getting tongue-tied in the middle, I will formulate a motion. The reason I voted against this motion is because lot sizes are significantly below. It's low-lying land. There has been rectification. Sorry, there has been removal of trees and shrubbery without permit. And it's in an area where there appears, from what's been said today, to be a significant waterfront incursion into the land from the general eastern side. I move that proposal SA 2022/31 1433 Dolphin Sands Road, 3-lot subdivision, be refused because of the vulnerability of the general area on the eastern side to seafront incursion, the low-lying situation of the land, the subject of the development application, and the removal of the vegetation subsequent to the photograph contained in figure 3 without council permission. And the further changing of the amenity of the area.
So we, councillor Young, I understand that we do need, pursuant to section 57 of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act and the Tasmanian Planning Scheme, Tasmanian Planning Scheme, Glamorgan Spring Bay, SA 2022/0031 at 143 Dolphin Sands Road, Dolphin Sands be refused for the following reasons.
Yeah, I'm happy with that phrase.
It
then we can just-
is a procedural matter
Yes,
that we need to be sure that we
I'm
have the
happy with
wording correct.
that phrase,
Right.
in
okay.
the preface.
So the refusal reasons, we've got the refusal reasons.
Oh, I see. And I want to add something else for it. I said amenity of the area and the impact on the adjacent reserve, potential impact on the adjacent reserve.
Which is under section C 7.0, the Natural Assets Code. So it's in breach of C7. And the, C7.7.1,
With the waterway.
so this is under this one.
Yes.
So councillor, we are probably going to have to include in breach of C 7.7.1 of the Natural Assets Code. Is that correct?
I'm happy
And
to put
C
that,
7.7.2 of the Natural
I'm
Assets
happy
Code.
to include
with-
that as an extra reason.
Yeah.
Not as an alternative reason, an extra reason.
We'll just get it fixed.
Oh, okay, sorry, yeah, okay. Just bear with us for councillor Young, could you just bear with us for a couple of minutes while we get
Now, I'm happy to wait.
the wording correct?
I'd like to see it
Yes.
when it's time.
Sure. I think it's if council is happy to do that, it's just makes it a little bit easier than adjourning and
No, I'm
coming
happy
back
to wait.
and the like, so.
I'm sure those that are watching online
Will understand the
will
procedural fairness
be
of
as
it all.
patient as we are.
As I said to you earlier, councillor, it's the issue is around procedural fairness, both for council and for the developer. Seven point seven point one. Or is it just, is it 7.7.1 or is it 7.1? 7.7.17, okay. James, do you- Councillors, could I draw your attention to the motion? Councillor Young, if I could draw your attention to the motion, if you would.
Oh, yes, yes, I'll just put it up. That should be the. The. To the, sorry, the land, the subject of the development application.
No, I think the first thing remains. Ms. Castle, I think. So, no.
I've got to do it twice, you know?
Situation of the land subject, so get rid of the second B.
Well, it doesn't say to what it's subject, the land, the subject of the development application. Be removed. I would like to put in significant.
We don't know that.
Well, all you can do is compare the 2022 photograph Mr. Bonnet referred to, and it's been the day, rough day, and the current situation is taken by a photograph by our acting general manager before he goes home tonight. If he's not getting the full list.
Councillor Young, can I just remind you,
And-
trying to get a motion.
I understand. Keeps going up. It should be without, after without, please put the cursor in after the word without. There's a gap prior, P-R-I-O-R. Of the area. In the amenity of the area. And because of. I just think you have to have that in the beginning. That read all right? Thank you. There's no seconder yet, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Young, so I will. Councillor Young should read it again.
Yes.
Yeah, Councillor Young, could I ask you to read the motion again,
Yes,
please?
please.
Thank you.
Pursuant to section 57 of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993 and the Tasmanian Planning Scheme, the proposal SA 2022/31, 1433 Dolphin Sands Road, Dolphin Sands, open brackets, open brackets, 3 lot subdivision, close brackets, be refused for the following reasons. Because of the vulnerability of the general area on the eastern side to seafront incursion. And it's not seafront, it's got to be seawater, hasn't it? No, seafront. And low-lying situation of the land, the subject of the development application. There's a piece missed out of that. And the significant removal of the vegetation subject to the photograph in figure 3 of the report to council without prior council permission and further change in the amenity of the area. And should be we haven't got the business about
The reserve.
with the effect on the reserve. See, it's got non-compliance with the assets code, which I'm happy with. But before the last dot point and the deleterious effect on the adjacent, what reserve is it?
Yep, adjacent reserve.
Adjacent
reserve.
And the adjacent reserve. No. Please take back to development application. Stop. Please move into a third dot point before non-compliance. No, that's second dot point. A dot point there and put the because. There are 3 dot points. please insert a dot point, a new dot point before because. Yes, thank you. Effect upon the adjacent, upon the adjacent reserve. The correct, yes. Comma, and, comma. Now I'll continue. I'll just read the dot points again. For the following reasons, because of the vulnerability of the general area on the eastern side to seafront incursion and low-lying situation of the land, the subject of the development application, the significant removal of the vegetation subsequent to the photograph I'm just thinking of the English. Subject to the photograph contained in figure 3 of the report to council, comma, without prior council permission, comma, and the further change in the amenity of the area. The deleterious should be no capital, it should be little t in the deleterious effect upon the adjacent reserve, and because of the non-compliance with C7.0 Natural Assets Code, comma, specifically C7.7.1.7 and C7.7.2.
Thank you, councillor.
I'm sorry it was so long. It just didn't come easily from the head. If I was younger, it might make a difference.
Councillor Young, I'm going to ask you, that is your motion.
It is.
Thank you, George. Council laws are clear on the motion. On that basis, I will ask for a seconder for the motion. Churchill. Councillor Young, do you wish to speak to the motion, or do you?
I think it has all been said.
Are there any other speakers? Councillor Woods.
Thank you. I would just like to bring to the attention of those that may be watching also what we're actually talking about with regards to C7.7.1 and C7.7.2. See, Natural Asset Code is C7. Development standards for subdivision A1. The acceptable solution is that a proposed lot must be for the creation of separate lots for existing buildings, be required for public use, be required for utility, be for consolidation, or not include any works, buildings, areas, services, bushfire hazard management plan, or vehicle access within the waterway and coastal protection area. The proposal does not meet the first 4 requirements, and the building area and hazard management area are located within the buffer. As such, the proposal must meet the following performance criteria. What I'd like people to understand is the fact that this has said it does not meet it, but then we can just jump over here and it will meet the performance criteria. This is what we're sort of up against with making decisions. If it doesn't meet it here, we can turn the page and it'll meet it there. Pretty much the same with the Natural Assets Code C772. The same thing was said, and at the end, the acceptable solution cannot be met as the subdivision is not for existing buildings, public or utilities users, or consolidation, and the building areas and bushfire hazard management areas will be within the priority vegetation area, and as such, a proposal must meet the following performance criteria. I'd like people to understand the complexities of this, of decision making in the planning authority. because if it doesn't meet one, it can meet the other. So that's all I have to say.
And I think if I may, councillor Woods, it's one of the criticisms that I've had of the Tasmanian planning scheme for a very long time, and that it doesn't fit every situation. So as councillor Churchill said earlier, there are some significant failings in the Tasmanian planning scheme as it sits at the moment. So if there's no further discussion, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? The motion's carried unanimously. Agenda item 2.3 is the draft amendment AM 2023-01. It is the rezoning of 155 Rebben Road, Orford, and a 90-lot subdivision. There is a recommendation on page 38. Sorry, procedural matter, councillor?
Has this one been removed for the next meeting? It didn't.
That's the recommendation. The recommendation is councillor
Long day.
Young, thank you.
I move that council defer draft amendment AM 2023-01 Glamorgan Spring Bay local provision schedule rezone 155 Rebben Road, Orford, and 90-lot subdivision representations to ordinary council meeting on 26 September 2023.
Is there a seconder, please? Councillor Churchill, thank you. Councillor Young, do you wish to comment?
Wish to speak.
Are there any questions, any comments in relation to it? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Carried unanimously. Under Regulation 25, the Local Government Meeting Procedures Regulation 2015, as chairperson, I hereby declare council is no longer acting as a planning authority under the provisions of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993 for section 2 of the agenda. Councillor Woods.
It is with much pleasure that the council no longer acts as a planning authority at 409.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor McQueenie, thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Agenda item 3 is the closure, and like you, councillor Woods, I take great pleasure in declaring the meeting closed at 4:10 p.m. Thank you. Thank